Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. In the critically acclaimed fantasy fiction venture by Daniel Jimenez, a brother and a sister, born into a strange and cruel world, try to make the most out of their unfair hand that they were dealt. With both parents dead and a giant as their surrogate father, they attempt to find their place in the world. Soon they find that trying to fit in is the least of their problems when a deadly secret from the past jeopardizes their future. As a first-generation Mexican-American, Daniel Jimenez was born and raised in Houston, Texas, under divorced parents. With the difficulties of growing up in a split household, Daniel found comfort in making up stories in his free time, stories he would conjure up in the span of months to even years. It wasn't until he decided to go out on a whim and pick up a pen and paper that he found a passion for writing. And that passion comes to life in venture. And author Daniel Jimenez joins us on This Week in America. Daniel, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. You've created What a Story and What a World in Venture, book available, writersrepublic.com. We'll give you that information as we go through the interview. Didn't want to give away too much of the plot line as I was doing the introduction, but wanted to keep people interested in the story that you're telling. Give us a little background on the book, the plot, and how it develops, because you've got a number of layers you're dealing with here, aren't you?
Yes. The plot line is more or less a revenge story, and it's about how far an individual is willing to go and how monstrous they're willing to become in order to fulfill a goal. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Daniel, let's talk a little bit about the main characters, the brother and sister. They really go through a lot, don't they?
Yes. With both of their parents dead, they have to find a way to stick together and make the most of what they have.
And it's remarkable how they go about that and the obstacles they hit that we'll talk about during the course of this conversation. Our guest is Daniel Jimenez. That's Jimenez. The book is Venture. You'll find it at writersrepublic.com. Information, of course, on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Talk about the impact of the antagonist in your story, Venture.
So the antagonist is he's the one, who killed the parents. He took the main characters' lives and turned them on their heads. And I wouldn't say he's necessarily evil. He can be seen as evil, but it's all a matter of perspective, as anything is.
Yes.
He's just trying to, keep his own life. He's trying to prioritize his own life. And to him, it doesn't matter who's in the way.
That's interesting how all of this unfolds. It's in the fantasy fiction. The story is Venture. The title is Venture. You'll find it at Writers Republic. I'm going to go back a second to brother and sister. Let's talk about the relationship between the two main characters. They have a certain bond, don't they?
Right. I tried to make their relationship as realistic as possible. Brothers and sisters argue, they have fallouts, they might want to hit each other at times, but stop themselves from doing it. They're not perfect siblings, you could say.
Well, and that's what makes the story so believable as you're reading the story Venture. If anybody has had a sibling, you'd like to punch another sibling from time to time. That's just the way it is in a brother-sister or brother-brother type relationship. You've created a really remarkable setting here. Talk about that, the setting where Venture takes place and how you went about creating this fantasy world for your characters.
So Venture takes place in a world that used to be similar to ours. They had cars, technology, basically everything we had and more. But there was a war between species where you could imagine that, our technology wouldn't bode well with certain species like orcs or giants or hobgoblins. They might consider that unnatural. So we've kind of receded from, in my book at least, receded away from technology, and we're kind of going backwards. Instead of progressing through technology, we're sort of regressing and losing cars, phones, basic things that we have now.
How long did it take you to create this world in Venture, the setting where this takes place? How long did it take, and how much research and thought really went into developing this? Because the world really comes to life on the pages of Venture.
It took me about a year to come up with the story. And then as I'm going through and writing more and more books, the setting is kind of unfolding even before me. And it's kind of interesting writing down these new books that I have already ready to be published. I'm kind of seeing firsthand and making it up, not as I go, but I'm doing research at the same time to see what works and what doesn't. And I have a team of proofreaders here with me that I can bounce ideas off of them. And if they tell me that it doesn't work, then I change something up.
Yeah, I love the process you go through, and it obviously works for you. The book is Venture by Daniel Jimenez, our guest on This Week in America. Book available, writersrepublic.com. You'll find the usual places as well. Information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. So often you will talk to writers, authors who sit there and have this very rigid outline before they get started. And it sounds like you maybe have an outline there, but it's not necessarily that rigid. It's sort of where the story takes you. Talk about that. I would think that gives you so much more freedom as an author. Once you really get into storytelling, you may decide to go off in a different direction.
Right. For me, the story came through, now this might seem a bit out of the ordinary, but for me, the story came through a dream that I had.
Interesting.
And I kind of woke up and said, well, that was a really good dream. Let me not write it down. And the dream sort of, as I was writing it down, it started to become a story. It was a paragraph, and then it transformed into a chapter, and then into multiple chapters. And before I know it, it was an entire book.
That's amazing. Does it work that way for you, that once the ideas start, you better have a computer or a legal pad nearby to write those down? It sounds like it's sort of a flood. When it comes, you better be there and have plenty of ink in the pen because you've got a story that's developing.
Yeah, I keep a notebook and a pen next to my bed when I sleep, and it's come in handy. It's come quite in handy. I've used it many times.
Because you just never remember if you don't write it down. You think you can, and suddenly morning comes and there are gaps in the story, and you wish you would have done what Daniel does, which is write it down as the thoughts come to you during the evening. Go back and talk about the war for just a second or so here. What role does the war play in the story Venture?
The role that the war plays is it affects some of the main characters, because there is obviously discrimination towards them. There's discrimination towards orcs, giants, certain species, and at the same time, there's discrimination against humans because the whole reason that there was a war in the first place was because of human advancement. And humans are seen as greedy. They want money, they want power, while orcs and giants are seen as animalistic, hungry. They want, it's a stereotype that orcs and giants would eat babies. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
That's like, I would say that's equivalent to being a racist in our world, to say a stereotype such as that in my book.
Discrimination is something, as you just mentioned, you take on. Talk about working that into the story. Maybe some other themes, social themes that you have, because there. I said in the beginning, a number of layers here. And this is a book that you'll read, enjoy the story, but you'll be thinking about the story at the same time. Right.
So their surrogate father is a giant, and sometimes in the story you'll see him be discriminated against because he's walking around with these two children. He'll get looks. People will comment that he just wants to eat them, or he's saving them until they get older so he can eat them then. And that's kind of what we kind of see in today's society. I don't really want to get into that, but you can't see a certain person walking around with two people of different color or different ethnicity, because then people will judge that.
And you bring it out, like I said, there are a lot of different layers. It's such a great story that Daniel tells in Venture. The book is available, writersrepublic.com. Information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. If you're Googling Daniel Jimenez, that's Jimenez. This is a fantasy fiction. Let's talk about fitting into that category, similar to other classic fantasy fictions out there, but it's unique as well. Let's talk about the characteristics that make this similar. How is this similar to fantasy fiction?
In the way that it's similar to fantasy fiction, it's an adventure book. It has orcs, elves, goblins, swords, and fantasy vehicles in there, and fantasy creatures as well. That's one way that it's similar, but in a way that it is not similar is that it's not, you open this fantasy book nowadays and it's we got to save the world or something, and or a million people are counting on us. But this book is more personal, is between the two main characters and the villain. It's not like such a heavy stake where if we fail, the world will end.
It's got the classic elements that people enjoy in fantasy fiction, but a different spin on it that Daniel has put into Venture. You had mentioned other books. Will there be sequels? It sounds like you've got other books ready to be published.
Yes, sir. I have the second book ready to be published, the third book ready to be published, and I'm working on the fourth book right now.
What do you hope the takeaway is from the readers reading Venture and the subsequent books? As I keep saying, it's an excellent story, well told, and it's more than just that. What do you hope the reader gets as takeaway from reading Venture?
There's an underlying message in the book Venture. I'll let the reader decide what it is for themselves, but what I mostly want is for people to have fun while reading the book, to enjoy reading the book, and to finish reading the book and really just come out thinking maybe they should, share the love that they have for other people, let it be known, and really cherish the time that they have.
That's interesting that the reader may have a different takeaway than the next reader, and that's sort of the benefit of what you're doing, the art that you're in of storytelling that you're involved in. You've got a fascinating background. I understand in a first grader you were able to read up 100 words per minute. So this really telling stories and reading, this started at an early age for you, didn't it? What was it that fascinated you about storytelling and story reading?
Well, when I was younger, I guess I would read more books than the average student. I can't say the same during high school, because that's really when I started to make my own stories in my head. But when I was younger, I'd say elementary or middle school, I was always the kid that would be reading or thinking in class. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And, yes.
I would just enjoy seeing how the story would unfold. And I was in AP English class, and that's really where I learned how to write a story. And it just kind of all, I guess, worked out in my, it just kind of worked out for me, really.
Well, it really has, and the end result is Venture. This is the first book that's out there now. Others will be coming out shortly by Daniel Jimenez, our guest on the program. Who were some of your influences people you enjoyed reading at a young age, and people you read now and really enjoy reading and maybe learn from?
I can't remember any specific names, but one book that I did enjoy in middle school was Code Talkers. It was about a Native American soldier during World War II. They used his Navajo language to send secret messages to the Allied forces. And I thought that was really interesting. That was a change of perspective on the entire World War II aspect that I had envisioned when I was younger. And a book that I read recently, which I enjoyed, was Dracula and H.P. Lovecraft's horror stories.
Interesting. So this is an incredible story. It sounds like that your imagination got you through maybe some difficult times. I mentioned a broken family as you were growing up. How important was the imagination and being to slip off in your mind and come up with these different stories? It sounded like it was almost a lifeline that was thrown to you.
It sort of was in many ways. Growing up without one parent, I sometimes wondered how I could fix that, or what I could do. And other times I wondered, what would it be like if they were both together as I was a little kid, and how different my life might have turned out.
A couple minutes left on the program. Daniel Jimenez is our guest. If you're Googling, that's Jimenez. The book is Venture, More to Follow. Daniel, what has this been like? This is almost like a dream come true. You've read, you have had all these stories. You've wanted to share these stories. Now you're sharing these stories, receiving excellent reviews worldwide. What's this been like, the writing process, having it out there, and having people enjoy your stories?
It's extremely surreal. I sometimes can't believe it's happening. I almost don't believe it at times. And whenever my what would I call them? Marketing assistant.
Yes.
Or marketing executives, they call me and they email me and they tell me all this good news, and I struggle believing it sometimes because it's nothing like I've ever experienced before.
Well, this is just the beginning for what I'm sure is going to be a remarkable writing career by Daniel Jimenez, our guest on the program. His website, by the way, is danieljimeneztheauthor.com. We'll have that on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Jimenez is Jimenez. This book, Venture, available at Writers Republic. You can track Daniel when the other books in the series come out. Daniel, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Congratulations on the success of Venture. Looking forward to future books and having a chance to talk about those as well. Thank you for being with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
It has been a pleasure. Daniel Jimenez, our guest. The book is Venture. You'll find it at writersrepublic.com. All the information on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We're back on today's program after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, Associate Producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, Segment Producer. Ben Watson, Webmaster. Otto Bechet, Director of Engineering and TV Production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, Executive Producer of This Week in America.